So today's blog is finding soulmates versus finding the other. Now, when I'm meaning soulmates, I am meaning multiple for one person. So I'll get into that. And of course, I can't bring this up without bringing up the idea of the divine female and the divine male. This is also an introduction to the newest series, which is going to be the Venus and Mars placements in your chart. So when talking about Venus, you can't talk about Venus without talking about Mars. With talking about Mars, you can't talk about Mars without talking about Venus. They go together, yin, yang, male, female. Now, with today's changing world and the changing roles, what really is female and what really is male? Good question. Male is everything that is externalized, everything on a macro level. Female is everything that is internalized. It's everything on a micro level. When we're talking about male, that deals with things that are global, outward reaching, physically action-oriented, exerting energy. This is why often the workplace has typically been the male world. This is like, imagine space. It's the telescope. It's looking outward. And then when we're talking about female, that's everything inward. The most obvious representation of this would be childbirth. You have these tiny, tiny, tiny cells that are in your body, and the female body spends months developing those internally. This is the miracle of the female energy. So it's everything on a micro level. The microscope, it's like the atoms, looking at not the action, but the feelings, the reasons behind it, all the internal mechanisms, the mind, the dream world, imagination. It's all of those inner workings behind why we do what we do. And for so long, this world has gone hidden. We have been more fixated on looking at things from the male perspective. And now things are changing and we're starting to learn more about the female perspective, which of course is in all of us because we all have a male and female energy to us. So if you are transgender, if you are gay, if you were raised in an environment where it was not okay to be masculine and you had to be feminine, or it was not okay to be feminine and you had to be masculine, then whatever energy you identify as your main energy, that's what we're going to see you as in this video, okay? So if you're born male, but you see yourself as female, then female is your dominant energy. If you're straight, but you just feel more masculine, even though you're born feminine, then think of yourself as male when we talk about you in this video, because that is way more important than what you were actually born as. All right. The traits that we see as masculine are good and bad. The traits we see as feminine are good and bad. Negative male traits could be aggression, not being honest with your emotions, trying to control everything around you instead of feeling. Emotions that are female could be self-destructiveness. It could be being lazy, never feeling empowered. If you are one of the extremes where you start representing the negative energy of your dominant gender, the problem is that your supporting gender is not being recognized. If you are a male, then your Mars energy is taking the front seat and totally ignoring the Venus energy. If you are female and you are representing all of the negative traits of the female energy, then your Mars energy is being ignored. So, of course, this leads me to the Harvey Weinstein situation. I looked up his chart. He has Venus in Pisces and he has Mars in Scorpio. Obviously, his Venus energy has been completely repressed, which is why he is not able to empathize with anybody. His Mars energy has just been ballooned out of proportion. That's why he was assaulting women. That's why he had such a hatred for women, because he was not wanting to see the Venus energy within himself. And because he has Scorpio as his Mars placement. Scorpio, of course, is the realm of sex and taboos and secrecy. So he is abusing people sexually, wanting them to keep the secret, and having this whole underworld that is putting him in power over others. And I'm not saying that if you have Mars and Scorpio, that's how you're always going to be. But for anybody who has their male and female energy out of whack, where they're not able to see themselves clearly and both sides are feeling represented, then you are going to be the worst of what that gender represents. When the male and female energy is out of whack, you can come across as someone who worships the other gender, to the point where you let them walk all over you, to the point where you feel like you need them to actually live, to survive, because, well, they give you that opposite energy. Without them, you die. In other cases, it's the opposite of that. You hate the other gender. You're constantly just seeing them as the bane of existence. You project onto every man or to every woman the worst of what the world has to offer. In your mind, maybe you think, oh, I was hurt by somebody. But honestly, that's not what it comes from. It comes from the fact that you are not in touch with your male or female energy within inside of yourself. So that's why I'm doing this series. So you can not only get in touch with that energy, but also understand it more fully. When we say soulmates, what we're really talking about is somebody who has the key to unlocking a part of ourselves. Sometimes we don't even know that part was there. In psychology, they call that the subconscious. In astrology, that could be any part of your chart that you just weren't really aware of. Maybe you knew it was there logically, but you just never felt it. So you can have a soulmate who is just a friend. You could have a soulmate who is a guru. You could have a soulmate that's a romantic soulmate. We'll get into that later. But a soulmate is somebody who shows you a part of yourself that you've been missing. They hold up a mirror to you. And of course, it's a gift that you will never forget. It will forever change your life and it will heal a part of you. And how does this differ from the other? Okay, well, the other is when you are just so stimulated and so passionately, magnetically attracted to somebody. And it's in a worshipful, it's in a starvation, it's in a depraved state. Okay, this is someone who represents everything that you need and you can't live without. They're like water, but the second that they turn away from you, you're dehydrated again. This is because the other is someone who represents your supporting gender. Okay, this is confusing, but let's say you identify with male. If you are a male, then the other is going to be the person who embodies your Venus placement. Okay, you have Venus in Cancer. This woman embodies everything about Cancer. She is just like an eternal mother. Her touch is just like so loving and so nurturing. She's so sensitive and so in touch with her emotions at every whim. She's just being like genuine. She gets you feeling crazed because you've been starved from being around what you need. That's that Venus placement. And until you are able to be that Venus in Cancer person completely, then you will just be like ravenous when you see it in somebody else. Usually when you're younger, that's why we have just such intense feelings in our 20s. Like we just can't live without this person. Everyone else in our life is like, they are so wrong for you. You don't even see that. What is wrong with you? Are you crazy? It's usually because they are just the embodiment of the Venus or the Mars placement. I will tell you one of my placements. So I have Mars in Libra. That's why I like to talk. And when I was younger, a guy who was just charming and suave and could win everybody over was just so attractive to me. Like, I just couldn't get enough of it. Now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, yawn. Yeah, great, awesome. Because I now have that within myself. So if you find yourself being walked all over by whoever you're dating, or if you find yourself just having like hatred for all men or all women, and like, they just are all users or abusers or whatever, this could be why. And, you know, with this whole movement of women coming out and actually accusing a certain man of sexual assault or sexual harassment, this is not male hatred. That is actually the opposite of male hatred. What happens psychologically is if you have been abused by somebody, but you have not confronted that person, then subconsciously you will start attacking innocent people. Maybe you'll start attacking yourself. You'll start attacking other men who are totally innocent, who have not done anything wrong to you. And until you actually take that energy that's negative and direct it back to who deserves that energy, then you will be victimizing yourself and others in your path undeservingly. So we're not talking about people that have come clean about what has happened to them and how they've been abused. That is not hatred. Okay, now that we got that straight, we're really talking about victimizing innocent people or holding people on a pedestal when they don't deserve it. That's when you have an imbalance in your male-female energy. A romantic soulmate, what is that? All right, well, a romantic soulmate in astrology means it's somebody who does not represent your Venus or Mars placement. That is who you're attracted to, okay? So that's the other. Who you end up marrying is what they say is your soulmate, your romantic soulmate. And that person for a woman is represented by Jupiter, because Jupiter is the ultimate planet of expansion. So this is a man who does not cage you into feeling like you're dying of starvation without them, which is what the other represents. But this is a man who makes you feel free. They help take you closer to your calling in life. For a woman, the man that you're going to marry, that is someone who is like your Jupiter energy. It's also someone who is like your descendant energy. That's the opposite of your ascendant sign or your rising sign. Because the ascendant is the mask you wear or how you perceive the world at large. And then the descendant sign is kind of an area where you have a blind spot. You're not able to see things clearly. You haven't developed it as much. This is someone who really can help you to learn new things about yourself. Also, the romantic soulmate, as I discussed earlier in blogs, usually doesn't come into your life until you start tapping into your North Node energy. For a man, the romantic soulmate is going to be the descendant, but also be related to what their moon sign is. This woman will represent a lot of the traits of your moon sign, and they will take you more inward because the moon is internal, right? It's your deep emotional subconscious self. It's like she's the gatekeeper, like she's going to have the key to open and unlock many of the rooms to your subconscious and to your emotions. And the thing about the romantic soulmate that is so different than the other is that when you meet that soulmate, you will feel the freedom. You won't feel the desperation. There's no slave dominant kind of dynamic. It's a very freeing acceptance kind of dynamic. It can't be taken away because it's a part of you. And it just took that particular person to really unlock that with you. In terms of romantic soulmate, I think of the movie Pretty Woman, because the Richard Gere character, in the beginning, he looks down on this woman. She's like obviously a prostitute and she sells herself. Through the movie, he learns to respect her because she's emotionally vulnerable. She's connected to the truth about how she feels at all times. She's always aware of how she feels. He, of course, has been shut off from his feelings for a very long time, and that has allowed him to do things in business that he does not think are okay to do. So there's this moment where he's kind of thinking about, well, I shouldn't go for her, right? Because it's going to destroy my business. This has happened so many times that I've seen in life where there's a man who's successful and then he thinks that if he's emotionally vulnerable, if he's in love, if he finds someone he really cares about, that makes him weak. You probably heard that as well. This is just not true. Okay, it is true that you might miss out on some business deals. It is true that it's going to alter your perspective in a huge way. It's going to force you to change. Every romantic soulmate will force you to change. And you can quote me on that right there. If you think there's going to be a soulmate that comes into your life and you will not have to change, then you don't understand what a soulmate is. It's going to mean that it will create a better you, a better self. It's not like she made him into someone new. Okay, it's that he knew what he was doing was wrong. That's why he had been putting up blinders to his emotions. Let's give an example with women. Well, the one that comes to mind for me are women that stay in abusive relationships, which is almost all of them. And they feel like they're powerless and, they can't go it alone. And so they have to stay with this guy, whatever. I have to stay for my kids. Look, if you're in an abusive relationship, I don't care what excuse you have, you are out of touch with your masculine energy. Okay, they are taking the action for you, and you think that you need that. If you're willing to actually work on this, then you'll realize that this is the worst version of yourself. You can do so much better. When you meet a man that you respect, then that is what you want to be. You want to live up to this higher ideal that has always been inside of you. That is your Mars energy inside of you. I'm trying to think of the perfect movie to give as an example. The one that comes to mind, I guess, is Moulin Rouge. It's not the best example because she dies. However, from meeting him, she lives. And from meeting him, she finally finds out who she really is. She stands up for herself. She sees what she's made of. She realizes that she is not just someone's property and she can make a different choice, and it's her choice to make. The last thing about the romantic soulmate is that often you're going to meet them in scenarios surrounding what your placement is. So let's say you're a man and you have a moon in Cancer. You might meet your romantic soulmate in a home environment. Maybe it's a friend, a family, or maybe you'll meet them in their home. Just something involving family or other Cancer-like things. Could be a home show, something silly like that. Building a home. Now, if you're a woman and you have a Jupiter placement of, let's say, Scorpio, then maybe you meet your romantic soulmate when somebody that you love is dying, or when you're researching something that is taboo, or when you're digging deep to uncover secrets and bring them to light for the world. Maybe you're doing research or something like that. In today's world, men have so many more opportunities, but I would not wish for everyone, including myself, to be born a male. And the reason I say that is because there's something that has been taken away from them. They're not allowed to have yet, and hopefully that's changing, which is they are not allowed to get in touch with their feminine energy. They have been denied that whole side of themselves for so long. And I think the movement for women to start embracing their masculine energy happened earlier. And so women are starting to more kind of understand that part of it. But men are still barely even realizing that internal feminine side. That's why a woman can be like, oh yeah, I kissed a girl and I liked it, to quote Katy Perry. But a man to say the same, obviously not okay, right? So we've still got a long ways to go. But part of the reason why gender is becoming so fluid these days is because we are starting to really embrace our feminine and masculine energy. So the more that we do that, the more that we are going to start seeing a change and a shift where feminine and masculine will not be so rigid anymore. There will be people that are born female, that feel male, and that's all cool. It's going to be normal. I think this is great because the more that we're able to have unique experiences, the more that we bring to each other. If we're all the same, there is nothing to learn. Without further ado, let's start the series.